Today, we're going to start by learning to read better with AI. We do this to increase our learning rate and save time by eliminating things we just don't need. This particular lesson is about learning to read better, leveraging the power of artificial intelligence. And one of the ways that I learned to do this was a long time ago. I read a book, it's been several years. I read a book called How to Read a Book. Inspired me to learn to do something quite well called inspectional reading. Inspectional reading, you can think of as kind of imagine if you have a book or a paper or whatever you need to read, and you flip through it pretty quickly and you get a feel for where all the chapters are, maybe what the first sentence is in each chapter. You read the table of contents, perhaps you even read through the glossary or any type of index that might be there, because of course the index is a highlight of the terms or words that are most important to the work. So when that exists, you really want to pay attention to that. But I wanted to be able to automate this so I could do it much faster, and I wanted to be able to add in a little bit more here and there. So I created an artificial intelligent assistant, and I named this particular assistant Tex. So Tex is really by far one of my most used assistants, and it's also one of the ones I've been building and working with the longest. So let's take a tour of Tex. I want to show you how he works and what I'm able to do in order to speed up my inspectional reading. So we're going to go over to ChatGPT Plus in this case, and we're going to go onto the left nav bar and open this up. And you'll see I have many dozens of assistants. I've created assistants for all kinds of tasks, but this is the one that we're interested in today, Tex. So I'm going to pick on Tex, going to close this because we don't need it. And you'll notice the text says it is used to it's a customized prompt based on logic and grammar models to analyze any text and break it down into claims, questions, terms, propositions, and some logical analysis. It cuts off because there's not enough characters when you create your GPT on ChatGPT in order to do this. Let's go on in, and first things first, we need something to analyze. So like I said, we're going to be reading in and trying to learn about bioclimatic architecture and specifically the context of double-skinned facades. So we need some documentation or a paper or something about that. So let's just go on over to, let's try just Google Scholar. I think that'd be okay to start. And we'll pick up something here like double skin facades, and we need to find a good PDF. We're not going to get too fancy. We're not going to be doing like everything that I would do to create a full analysis of double skin facades. I'm going to show you how to do one paper, and then you can do the same thing for many, many, many things. So let's take a look. So let's find something that works. Natural ventilation, optimal operation, greenhouse effect. This looks interesting. Let's see what this is. Great. So we've got a 32-page paper. It's pretty dense, as you can see. That's going to take a little work if we want to read this from scratch. But we're going to get started a different way. We're going to do an inspectional read, and we're going to use text to do it. So first, I'm going to download this document like that, and we will grab that over here and go back to text, and then I'm going to drag that into the window here, and you can see that it's uploading the PDF. All right, so I'm just going to tell it analyze this. It basically knows what that means. Okay, so here we go. So now, as you might imagine, what text is doing is reading the PDF in its way and in its own way, and it's starting to produce the output that I've programmed it to do with a series of specialized prompts and cues and various things. We're going to go into how to make these later. These first lessons are really about what you can do, not so much how to do it. So the first thing you're going to see is what is called the unity. The unity from How to Read a Book is the simplest possible description of what the document is about that you could possibly create. This is obviously a complex document, and text does a really good job usually. So let's just see what text is written here. This paper analyzes the impact of various constructional features of double skin facades, or DSFs, on heat transfer and fluid dynamic behavior. It aims to understand how geometric and material properties, shading, and airflow paths. Study summarizes the experiment. Okay, so that's pretty solid. So I have a good idea now, just from reading the Unity, that this is something I want to dig deeper into. If that unity was way off, it just isn't my research path, I'm done here. I'm not really going to go much further. I'm going to go look for the next paper. But let's go on and see what we've done. So the next thing we've done is we've pulled out of the document what are called propositions. These are a subject and a predicate, and they are basically these sort of statements of I'll say facts. Facts are relative, but these are just statements of something the author believes to be the case. So we'll call them facts from the author. So let's take a look at a couple examples. This one, number 3, the complex interaction of DSF constructional features is underexplored, leading to gaps in knowledge that hinder optimal design and operation. I mean, that's pretty awesome. So this paper is expressing that this area is underexplored and needs to be looked at further. Okay. So that's really, really important. Shading systems within the DSF are critical to controlling heat transfer. Now, I want to remind you, I don't know very much about this subject right now. I did do a little bit of research previously to get ready to record this video for you. But in general, I am far from an expert in DSFs. So this is super interesting. So by reading through this by reading through these propositions, I am learning a lot about the kinds of things that might impact DSFs and what I might need to care about. So let's keep going. The next thing that we extract from the document, or text extracts from the document, are claims. Claims are basically when the author of the document is saying something is or is not in many cases. So you can see here we've extracted 4 primary claims from the document. And we can always ask text for more, by the way. I can show you that actually in a second. But this is claiming, number 1, that DSFs contribute to improving thermal comfort and energy efficiency in buildings, but require careful design to avoid underperformance. Yeah, absolutely. I know that to be true. The literature lacks a systematic overview of how the features like cavity depth, airflow paths, and shading affect thermal behavior. Okay. Okay, so this document, when it was written, is really expressing the fact that we know that these DSFs might be good, but however, it's really just understudied. The science isn't there yet. Now, there are several these are called primary arguments, and text is designed to extract primary arguments from a text and tell us what the author's primary arguments are. And in this case, it is also extracted 4. So it's arguing that understanding and optimizing the interactions between different DSF components, cavity depth, airflow, and shading is essential for improving energy performance, but it's difficult due to their complex and dynamic interactions. I've just had an idea right here thinking about this particular process. My wife is an architect, and we had a long talk about DSFs in the car the other day because I told her I was going to do this particular video on this topic. And so she shared with me some of the things that she knew. And it just occurs, I've just had a really interesting idea for her business. I'm not going to share it here, but the next bit is they're arguing that natural ventilation in DSFs, particularly in warm climates, can be problematic due to potential overheating, underscoring the need for design strategies that optimize airflow and shade. Yeah, absolutely. The use of experimental validation for CFD. I don't know what a CFD is. Okay, so there's something I don't know, but we might come to that back in a moment. Okay, so you get the idea, right? There's all the primary arguments the authors are making. How do the geometric properties of DSFs affect airflow? These are questions that are posed either explicitly or implicitly in the document. And the role of shading systems, how can these models, I still don't know what CFD means. Let's just go down here for a second. Oh, I didn't even need to. There it is right there. We were about to get to it, so that's great. So anyways, these are the questions. And now we look at the terms. Text also extracts terms, and these are the key terms throughout a document that appear, usually they're going to appear multiple times, or they're particularly relevant or deemed relevant by the agent, by the assistant throughout the document. And in this case, we've identified 5 key terms: double skin facade, computational fluid dynamics. Now we know what CFD is. thermophysical behavior, shading system, heat transfer coefficient. Okay, excellent. So this breakdown of it tells you right here, this breakdown of the core propositions, claims, and arguments discussed in the paper, along with relevant terms and questions raised by the research. Excellent. Let me show you this thing I said so before. Are there more claims I should pay attention to? I'll do this sometimes if I don't get back a lot of claims, because this is a pretty dense and complex, 30 plus page paper. I would imagine that there's more in there, but it didn't really tap the assistant right at first. So let's see what we get. Okay, yeah, so we've got a couple more. So this is another way to sort of continue to drill down and drill down. All right, so at this point, I have a really good sense what this paper is about. And I do know that it's important to my research on this project. So I want to continue. I want to save this paper, and I'm going to be using it later for other things. And this is what Tex is for. So now what I've basically done here is I've used an AI assistant to do something that I like to call reading the book backwards. Imagine if you have a complex subject that you want to master and you open the book and you know nothing at all. Even the first page is hard to read. But if you go all the way to the back and you start in the glossary and the index and you read backwards, you learn all the terms, and then you go back and you flip through the whole thing from back to front, then by the time you start at the front, when it's time to really learn, you're actually going to be way ahead, because you're already going to have placed into your mind a number of things that are going to give you anchors and references to other things you already know. And this is an incredibly powerful learning technique. Now that we've gone through this and you're actually seeing how we use text in order to read, the next step is going to be how we might use this information to begin to write, which is the next step in really really learning is to write. We write to think, we think to write. It's an incredibly powerful modality. All right, now we're on to the next lesson, and this one's really fun. This is one of the more this is another one of my virtual assistants, my virtual teammates, or my AI teammates, if you like, that have just been enormously helpful to me. We're going to talk now about a teammate that I call Co-Arthur. Co-Arthur is a writing assistant. It helps me think about my writing. It helps me work through ideas. It helps me brainstorm if I'm feeling stuck. So we're going to jump back over to ChatGPT now. So here we are in ChatGPT. I need to open up again the side window and go down and find Co-Arthur right here. So this is the assistant we're going to talk to right now. And Co-Arthur has a menuing system. Again, what we're going through here now, I don't want you to feel like you're lost. I'm showing you what's possible. Later in the course is when we show you how to do these things. In the full course, we go deep into how these things are built, line by line. You get all the files, you get everything you need in order to dig in, build these for yourself, and then begin to modify them and turn them into the assistance that you need for your day-to-day. So the way I usually will start with Co-Arthur when I log in and I open him up, Co-Arthur is my faithful co-author writing assistant for just about anything I might need to write. Totally true. And he runs on GPT 4.0 right now. So the first thing we'll do is we'll click start. And Co-Author is very helpful, always wants to help. And it says, to get started, could you let me know what you're working on or what you'd like assistance with today? What specific goal or topic do you have in mind? Well, now, funny you should ask. What have we been talking about? Let's go back and open up this double skim facades. So this is where it gets fun, because one of the finest places to continue the journey on any topic is with questions. So oftentimes I will come back here and I will look at these questions, and I'll start here and I'll have Co-Author work with me to start drafting kind of an article. It's really usually just for me at this stage, but let's take a look at this one. What is the role of shading systems in managing the thermal performance of a DSF? So let's go now. We're going to open up another window so we can have these side by side. I'll show you here and scroll down, find Co-Author again, and this here. And we'll put these side by side so you can see everything as we go through. So what's the role of shading systems? This is text, remember, from our prior conversation in the previous lesson. So let's go over here and say, I want to write, so what I want to do here is I'm going to start this again. I'd like to write an article about shading systems in DSFs. That's where we're going with this. So I want to write a draft article about shading systems in DSFs. Now, you might think, I mean, what does it know about DSFs? It doesn't know much. Co-author, we haven't told it anything. Here is the question we want to answer with our article. And in this case, I am going to tag it as a question, okay? And that helps the AI know where things are in context. You don't always have to do this, and the AIs are getting better and better about not needing things like this, but this will help guide the assistant to the answers you want as you go through the prompting processes. Now, in addition to that, a DSF is, okay, remember we've got some terms. So let's grab this term, put that in, and let's grab this unity up here. Let's see what we got. Geometric, no, I don't think so. I think what I will do though is I'm going to add that paper back. So I'm going to go back over and grab that paper again. This one. And let's have that in context as well. So remember, on this side, we have the same paper and we've broken it down into all these different things. If there's anything else in the breakdown by text that I think will help me with the answering of this question, I'm going to put it back in context. So in fact, you know what? I'm going to show you this. We're going to do it like this. I will take this whole thing. We're going to take the whole thing. We're going to come back over here and I'm going to say analysis. Okay. And then I'll do this. We have analyzed the paper that is attached. Use any of that analysis as you will to answer the question. All right. So we've done a lot here. And this is a fairly complicated prompt at this point. We're going to be able to get a lot done fairly quickly because of the way we stacked this up and built in all the analysis and we've done the prior work. So remember, we started out in lesson 1 learning how to read better and decide whether something was good for where we wanted to go with our research and our writing. Now we're using the output of that analysis as input to a different assistant named co-author whose sole purpose in life is to help me write. Co-author is designed to write like me. That's an important point about this particular one. You will not get the exact same results when you're using your own version of co-author because it, especially with ChatGPT Plus, if you have long-term memory turned on, it begins to learn more and more and more what you like because you tell it over time, you tell it to remember. All right, let's give this a go. So at this point, we're kind of done with the one on the left. So we'll go full screen, close this, and we'll zoom in a little bit. All right, the role of shading systems in managing the thermal performance of double skin facades. Sounds pretty good. Double skin facades are an innovative system. This article explores how shading systems, understanding heat transfer. According to the research, shading systems, yes. The role of shading in thermal, this is excellent. So I think we have really done a nice job using the source paper to write this draft article. Now, why would I want to do this? Maybe I want to educate my colleagues who haven't read the paper. Maybe I want to just educate myself and learn about double skin facades. I assure you, if I read this, I will know a lot more than I did a few minutes ago about this. For example, that's quite a detail. The slat angle, and by the way, I happen to know from prior reading that the slat angle is relative to the latitude and longitude of the building and the orientation, so that as the sun passes through the sky, and the seasons pass across the year, you get the maximum solar gain that you want at the right time. This is particularly important in very hot or humid climates. Convective and conductive heat transfer, optimizing shading, challenges for future directions. I mean, you see, this is very thorough. It did a nice job. Now I want to make sure that this article makes logical sense. So I'm going to show you the next step I'll do. I have yet another assistant. As I said, there will be many along this journey together. And I'm just going to copy the whole thing. And then I'm going to come down here and I'm going to do something. I'm going to hit the ampersand. This is a neat little hack that I really think is underappreciated with this. I've got another assistant here called Mr. L. And Mr. L is an assistant who kind of wants to be a lawyer and uses something called Lagrangian logic in order to analyze textual documents to make sure they make logical sense. So I'm going to call on Mr. L by ampersand adding Mr. L and adding him here. And I'm going to say, here is a draft. I don't need to do what I'm about to do entirely, but if I do it the way I'm showing you now, the results are typically better. But I like to guarantee my results. So that's why I do what's called chain of thought prompting with the prior article draft. And this is an opportunity to show you chain of thought prompting. So here's a draft article I have written. Please review it. Logical soundness. Sounds good. And I'll go article. And I will paste it right in. Okay, so I just literally pasted the entire article in, as you can see. And what this again is doing is chaining the thoughts. In this case, the thought is from the previous assistant, co-author, which built on the thoughts of the previous assistant, Tex. And at this moment, I haven't really blended much of my own thinking in here. I'm still just kind of in a learning mode. And this would be a really great thing, especially if I was working on a team, to now hand this out, but not quite yet. Let's do this logical analysis. Remember, Mr. L is going to do the analysis now, not co-author. We're nested now, one assistant deep. All right, now Mr. L's done his thinking, and here we go. So let's review for logical soundness, focus on the structure and reasoning in each section, and the argument flow. I'll analyze it thoroughly through the lens of a clear logical argument using Joseph Lagrange's framework. It's literally this is very detailed. So you have the introduction, conclusion, premise one, and premise two. So it's going to check the premises to the argument, and it uses something, sort of a logic chaining technique in order to go through. And it wants to understand all of these different things. And so you can see for every section, it's looking at the premises made and the conclusion. And now what it wants to do is make sure that one conclusion links to the next premises and those link to the next, so that there is a chained logical argument. And so now as we go down through, you'll see it is going in great detail, every single premise along the way. And then ultimately, it does the final evaluations and gives strengths. And almost always, Mr. L will give suggestions. This particular draft article did not get many suggestions because it's already written pretty well because of how it came from the prior structure of Tex and co-author. So the challenges and future directions section could specify research areas such as the CFD model improvements. Okay, so let's take these suggestions. And now remember, we're talking to Mr. L here. So we're going to break out of that and we're going to say, I have these suggestions to improve the draft article. Suggestions. And again, I am going to go back all the way back here, and I'm going to grab the whole thing again right here. Again, every time we do this, we're chaining thoughts together, one after the other, from assistant to assistant, from agent to agent. I'm kind of acting like the glue, bringing it all together. It's almost like it improves the focus, is the way I think of it. It's almost like bringing things to the surface that you want to matter the most when you do this type of chain of thought. So we're going to drop the article in. So there we've got our article. You see, we've got our suggestions, and we have these suggestions to improve the article. So I have these suggestions. Implement these suggestions. Okay, so let's go. So here we go. It's going to update the article with the suggested improvements. Remembering we only had two. Let's go back and look again. Research the CFDs and ensure that each point in optimizing. So now what's left to do is take a look at what co-author here has put together, including the suggestions from Mr. L, which built on the work that was including the suggestions from Tex. So what you should be starting to figure out is that even though we've only used ChatGPT Plus, we've used 3 different assistants in my own mind, all in tandem, to create this draft article through a series of prompts and context building and chain of thought work. This is an advanced workflow. I teach it right up front, and it doesn't even matter if you've not quite gotten all the way there yet with all the things I've done, because once you start to do this again and again and again, it just becomes second nature, and it becomes an incredibly powerful tool to create. And so in this, we've learned to read better. We've implemented a form, I did a new form of inspectional reading using text. We've learned to write drafts and implement and augment our thinking through that drafting process, just like anybody would when they write, using co-author. And then third, we've done some logical analysis of the things we've drafted and make sure that they make sense. If we get called to task to defend our position, we'll be able to do so. So let's take a look at what we have. This is the current state of the article, the role of shading systems in managing the thermal performance of double skin facades. It's a fairly long article, so I'm not going to read the whole thing. As we scroll down, we can see that this is indeed a very detailed article. It looks really good. You might think, gosh, well, I'd like to be able to back this all up. It's a nice draft, but can I really say those things? Are they true? Do they make sense? Well, the methods that we have used here and the model that we're using, which is ChatGPT 4 Omni, in this case, have done a really good job of bringing things together, but we might want to shore that up with some additional research. So what we'll do is we're going to jump over and we're going to look at yet another assistant. This one is already built. It's not something we have to build from scratch like I have with Tex and co-author and Mr. L. And it's called Perplexity. Perplexity, they say, where knowledge begins, is a really, really fabulous research assistant. And so I'm just actually going to put the whole article in, and I'm going to say, I need research that supports this draft article. Okay. And again, I will tend to do the same things here. Now, this is a really important point. If you subscribe to Perplexity, you get a choice of models, and there are many that are available. But I'm using Claude. So we've just done something, and this is like a bonus tip. I mean, this is a really important concept in this whole course. I call it chain of model prompting. So we've just jumped from ChatGPT into Perplexity, and I've configured Perplexity to use Claude to do research, in this case, about the article I've written and come back with suggestions, really, for how I will be able to support that article with that research. So again, it's kind of like using Claude Sonnet from Anthropic to do a kind of literature review for me. Now, I still, if I'm truly publishing research, I've got a lot of work to do after this. If I'm just trying to sort of skim or lightly advance through a topic, then I'm okay. I'm not going to have to go too much further. So I'm going to do pro and we're going to go through. So I need research that supports this draft article. Let's go. Now, why is Perplexity so different from something like ChatGPT Plus? Well, it is a lot different from ChatGPT Plus for Omni, which is what we're using in this particular recording. It is, in fact, not that different from the new models that OpenAI just released, ChatGPT 4.01 preview and O1 mini. They are agentic in nature, and they do a little bit of what Perplexity does. And I think they don't do all that Perplexity does. And I don't think they do it nearly as well because ChatGPT Plus is kind of an everything tool, whereas Perplexity is very, very focused. And so let's see what we've got. Okay, so we did a whole bunch of research. So this is all the stuff I typed in. And now we went through and we analyzed all of these sources from a number of different places. We took a look at material properties, dynamic control strategies, and one more. Again, looking at all these sources, quite a lot. And then we did a search for challenges and future research directions. Ooh, that's nice. And we looked at all of these sources. So it reviewed quite a few sources. You can see here 5, 8, 10, 11 sources. And it lists them all here. You can see them. You can see them all on the right hand side. And we're not going to do anything with that right now. But let's see what the answer is. Here's some key research findings that support the draft article on shading systems. Effectiveness, positioning. Okay, so we've got quite a lot of good stuff here. So this is super interesting because it's what you do next can really influence where your article goes. So I'm actually going to I'm just going to take this answer and I'm going to go back to co-author and say that's a great draft. I did some additional research. Let's integrate this into the draft. Maintain citations. Okay. So now it's going to take all of that research that was done across 14 different sources, compiled into that answer that Perplexity gave me, and weave it back into this draft. And that's coming from Claude. So now you've got Claude plus ChatGPT for Omni using 3 different assistant modifications that I've created. A lot has happened here by the time you get to this point with your article. And let's see, I should have done something. I could have told it to explain the changes you make. That's actually really nice to do sometimes. But even though I missed it, I can still ask it to go back. I'm going to do that because this was a fairly complicated set of merging changes between a lot of different research. And it's definitely going to be super interesting. I'm actually looking forward to reading this later and giving it to my wife. The revised draft incorporates your additional research, ensuring citations are maintained. I actually did not do a good job of maintaining my citations, but that's okay. The updates reinforce the article's key point. Can you tell me exactly what you changed in that last revision? I'm curious to know how it integrated those things, and so it'll give us a breakdown. Okay. So it added a specific claim that shading systems can reduce gains by up to 85%, and this was supported with the additional research reinforcing the article's original statement. And this was the actual text that was added. It added data, it added details. I mean, this is awesome. So listen, we're not going to go through this in detail. The possibilities here are truly endless. I mean, wow. I mean, it really blows my mind every time I do this. And we just reviewed a 30 plus page paper. We used 3 assistants, 2 models, and we did a lit review across 14 different sources using Perplexity to come back in and have all of this information here. In summary, is that we have learned to read better and we've learned to write better and definitely faster, giving ourselves a much higher capacity of creation of articles, but not of low quality, not that sound robotic, not that are poorly researched. By using multiple models and multiple methods and multiple assistants, we have really broken through a lot of the barriers that hold people back when they're learning to use AI for the first time. You could stop here and just use these 2 techniques and assistants similar to Tex, Mr. L, and co-author, and it will completely change the way you work as you start to integrate it into your day-to-day workflows. It's incredibly powerful. So I know I've said that a lot, but I just honestly I can't say it enough. I can't say enough about how transformative it's been for me, and I know for a lot of the students that have gone through the boot camps and workshops that I have taught using these methods. So at this point, we're ready to kind of move on to the next. Remember, at the very beginning of this, we said we would do reading, writing, and then learning to learn. And that would be the foundation upon which we build and build and build and build as we go through a much deeper dive and longer journey in the full course. We're going to call it a wrap on this section, and then we'll be back talking about learning how to learn. All right, we're back, and I'm going to show you a really fun way to use co-author. Now, in order to do this, we actually have to open the desktop version of ChatGPT. Okay, so this is also ChatGPT. It just happens to be the Mac desktop version, and we need that because it has an extra feature, this little button down here, which allows us to talk to it. And when I talk about using a tool like ChatGPT for Omni to learn how to learn, this happens to be one of my favorites. You can do this on the desktop. You can do this on your mobile device with the mobile app. And if you were to live anywhere near me and see me out walking and trying to get some exercise instead of sitting here in the neighborhood, you might see me with my AirPods in, just talking away, maybe looking a little crazy. You'd probably think I was on the phone, but I'm not. Generally, I'll be talking to co-author. And if you remember co-author from the prior lessons, we're going to go back and find him again. So the way we do that here is up here. Your GPT show up here. So let's scroll down and grab co-author. And you'll remember we know co-author. We've met that agent before, and we're going to have a chat. So if you'll remember, we're going to stick to the theme. We've been talking about double skin facades in bioclimatic architecture. So I'd like to have a little bit of a discussion with co-author about how bioclimatic architecture and double skin facades interact, and what other topics in bioclimatic architecture interface with DSFs. Again, I remind you, I'm starting to talk like an architect because I've been going through this process, but I'm not an architect and I really don't know all that much about DSFs or bioclimatic architecture. Let's click the button and here we go. Are we ready? Hi, I would like to talk a little bit today about bioclimatic architecture and especially the concept of DSFs or double skinned facades. And I really want to explore how double skinned facades interact with other components of bioclimatic design in architecture.
That sounds like a fascinating topic. Bioclimatic architecture and double-skinned facades, DSFs, play a significant role in creating energy-efficient and sustainable buildings. So there's a lot to unpack here. To get started, could you clarify a bit about your main interest? Are you looking to explore the principles behind how DSFs function within bioclimatic architecture, how DSFs interact with other sustainable elements like natural ventilation, passive solar design, or insulation? Or maybe you'd like to focus on case studies or specific examples of DSFs in real world projects. Let me know what you're hoping to dive into, and we can go from there.
I'm primarily interested in the application of bioclimatic architecture principles in design for the building of a passive solar greenhouse because I haven't seen one that really seems to fully use these concepts in a way that I think it maybe should.
Ah, a passive solar greenhouse. Now that's a fascinating application of bioclimatic design principles. When we think of passive solar greenhouses, they often seem underutilized in terms of maximizing their energy efficiency and climate responsiveness. It sounds like you're interested in exploring how automatic bioclimatic architecture principles, like those we see with double skinned facades, DSFs, can be better integrated into greenhouse design. Some elements to think about could include optimizing solar gain. Passive solar design principles focus on capturing and storing solar energy, and in a greenhouse, this could involve careful orientation, glazing, and thermal mass. Natural ventilation and climate control. Greenhouses typically struggle with overheating. Could concepts from DSFs, such as natural ventilation strategies or adaptive facades, help automatically regulate the internal temperature? Thermal insulation and seasonal adaptability. DSFs often excel in providing insulation during colder months while facilitating airflow in warmer months. How could a greenhouse use these dynamic systems to create more stable internal climates without relying on energy consuming HVAC systems? Would you like to brainstorm potential design features, or would you like to see some examples of similar greenhouse projects and what they could improve in terms of these principles?
I think understanding how DSFs could be applied to passive solar greenhouse design would be most fascinating because I've never seen a design that seems to incorporate that. In particular, if it also is passive in nature and not active or mechanized in any way.
Applying the principles of double skin facades, DSFs, to a passive solar greenhouse could definitely open up new possibilities for energy efficient design. What's especially intriguing here is your emphasis on making it entirely passive, relying solely on natural forces like solar gain, ventilation, and thermal regulation without any active mechanical systems. Let's dive into how DSFs could be used in this context. How DSFs work and their passive potential. In traditional bioclimatic architecture, a DSF consists of two layers of glass or another material with an air cavity in between. This air cavity can act as thermal buffer. It slows down heat loss in winter and prevents overheating in the summer. Natural ventilation system. The cavity allows air to circulate, which can create a chimney effect, drawing cool air in and pushing hot air out naturally. In the context of a greenhouse, these two features would be key, especially because greenhouses often struggle with temperature extremes. You could use these DSF principles to passively manage both temperature and ventilation in a greenhouse without active systems. How a passive DSF greenhouse might work. 1. South-facing orientation. The outer skin could be a glass or transparent layer optimized for solar gain in winter months. You'd want this layer to capture as much sunlight as possible. 2. Thermal buffering. The air gap between the outer and inner layers of the facade could act as a buffer, reducing heat loss in winter. This passive insulation would help maintain a more stable internal temperature by trapping heat during the night and cooler days. 3. Chimney effect for ventilation. In summer or during particularly hot days, the air cavity between the two skins could create a natural chimney effect. As the air heats up inside the cavity, it rises and escapes through openings at the top, pulling cooler air from outside into the space. This natural airflow could prevent the greenhouse from overheating without needing mechanical fans. 4. Thermal mass and heat storage. Inside the greenhouse, you could use materials with high thermal mass, like stone or water tanks, to absorb excess heat during the day and release it at night. This would complement the DSF by further stabilizing internal temperatures. 5. Seasonal adaptation. One of the great strengths of DSFs is their adaptability. By designing the air cavity and openings to respond to different seasonal conditions, the greenhouse could adjust itself naturally. For example, you could control solar gain in winter by closing vents in the DSF, or maximize airflow in summer by keeping them open. 6. Material selection. While most DSFs use glass, you could experiment with materials that allow for both transparency and heat regulation. For instance, polycarbonate panels might be used in certain parts for better insulation, especially in the outer layer of the DSF. Challenges and considerations. Condensation control. Greenhouses are humid environments, so ensuring that moisture doesn't accumulate inside the air cavity would be critical. Proper ventilation channels would be essential. Thermal mass positioning. You'd need to carefully consider where to place elements like stone or water tanks for thermal mass to ensure they absorb heat efficiently during the day and release it when needed. Possible innovations for a DSF greenhouse. Operable shading elements. Instead of relying on mechanical systems, you could incorporate automatic shading based on seasonal sun angles, like movable louvers within the DSF cavity that respond to temperature differentials. Natural airflow channels. Using baffles or natural flow regulators inside the DSF air cavity could help optimize airflow without the need for mechanical fans. Would you like to explore some potential designs for how this DSF system could be implemented in a greenhouse, or maybe compare it with other passive solar strategies already used in greenhouses? I'm happy to dive into the specifics based on your curiosity.
All right. You've given me an idea, and I would like to potentially combine earth tubes with the cavity so that as air is heated up in the cavity between the DSF and the actual building, it rises and pulls air through the earth tube and up, and that could be caught by some method, could be louvers, and drawn directly into the building.
That's a brilliant idea. By combining earth tubes with the double-skinned facade DSF, you're essentially creating a highly efficient passive system that could both pre-cool and preheat air as it flows through the building. This synergy between earth tubes and the DSF could provide excellent thermal control with minimal energy input. Let's break down how this could work in more detail.
I think we'll pause for now, and then I will be back to continue this discussion with you later. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. I'm glad we could explore these ideas together, and I look forward to continuing our discussion when you're ready. Feel free to reach out anytime. Have a great day.
Okay. So I wasn't thinking about any of that when I started that conversation, and I am going to edit this slightly, but leave it primarily intact here because, as you can see, this is what I was trying to demonstrate, learning how to learn, but using AI as kind of a sparring partner. I already had knowledge. I learned things as I was going through this entire exercise for this sort of mini course. And then along the way, I had a couple of new ideas. I mixed those in, and co-author here with a voice was just more than happy to have a chat with me, and they will chat with me until I am done and tired. I can come back and revisit this conversation later. If I find that co-author has forgotten some things, then you know what I do. I just go back into the chat, copy that out, bring it back into context, and start over. And it will eventually pick right back up as long as you feed it enough of the prior context. You can also tell it to remember things, which I will probably do in this case because I think this was a really fun conversation, and I really do actually want to think about passive solar greenhouse design for a particular area where I might need to build one. So, yeah, and I'm kind of excited that a combination of DSFs, earth tubes, window glazing, mechanical louvers, or well, passive mechanical louvers, it almost is like teaching the building how to breathe. So, yeah, I've actually really enjoyed this conversation I just had with co-author, and this is what I do when I'm walking around the neighborhood. Almost anytime I have an idea, we'll talk more in later lessons about how you can capture ideas, feed ideas in, and really grow. And this all feeds into effectively, one way or another, personal productivity systems. And over time, I've developed a lot of those that work really well for me, and I'll be sharing those kind of as a bonus along the way through the full course if you continue on with that. If you don't, I really hope you've enjoyed this free mini course and that you've gotten a lot of value from it in understanding what's possible. You don't just, it's not a search engine. You have to have dialogue with these assistants to really get the most out of them. You have to mix thoughts and modalities and templates and prompts and even models. And what I said was the chain of model type of prompting. And if you do that, your conversations with these assistants will be extraordinary. And you will look around at all the people who are saying, oh, it's just a fad. No, the models are going to collapse. It's all terrible. It's all just regurgitated stuff. No, when you work with the machine in the way that I've just demonstrated, you will achieve superior results to anyone who chooses not to. And if you then combine this work with the machine with other people, it just gets better. I could have had a whole team of people sitting here with me, architects, engineers, designers, to have that conversation. We could all take turns talking. It works. I've done it. It's absolutely incredible. I couldn't be more excited about the possibilities for collaboration and growth and learning. It truly is one of the most exciting times to be alive if you love learning and knowledge. Just take this, and it will change you, and it will change those around you, because as you share it, other people will pick up these things too. And just guess what? These tools get easier and easier to use all the time, but nothing I've showed you today is outside the realm of the normal. professional or person, as long as they just practice and play. I guess that's the last thing I'll say is you've got to get in there and you've got to play. So hop on the train. Let's go. I hope you really enjoy it like I do. Um, most days I just can't wait to dig in and see what I can learn today with this array of tooling. So I hope to see you in the full course. All right. If you are interested in that, just take a look in the links below and find the link to the workshop and you can sign up there, and I'll see you soon.